Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. I hope you guys are enjoying this fine Saturday evening when the lights are still on and water is still coming through the taps. We got to enjoy every moment we can while the getting is good. Today we're not going to be doing our run-of-the-mill current events analysis. We're going to save that for tomorrow. There's a whole lot of crap going on and it's about to get crazy, but we're going to save that for tomorrow. Today I want to talk just free form about some things that I'm noticing, because if you haven't noticed it, people are losing their minds out there right now, okay? And this all coincides with the economic downturn. As we approach the bottom in the next couple of years with this recessionary, stagflationary, depressionary style cycle that we're in, when we hit the bottom of the trough, right around the time when you see that happen, you're going to see political discourse get more aggressive. And right now, you're seeing a lot of chaos in the media, whether it's the Elon Musk Twitter thing, the Kanye thing. You know, people are losing their minds left and right. For some people, they're spouting wisdom as they lose their minds, depending on which side of the debate you're on. But regardless, as we enter austerity, you're going to see more fighting emerge. And this is just a sign that the 2024 election cycle is going to be raucous and riotous and quite possibly lead us to some civil war. Because remember, January 6th and the truckers' protests, these were unprecedented events. Okay, things that we had never seen, especially here in Canada. The invocation of the Emergency Powers Act, even a lot of these sweeping gun bans, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, that our government is trying to impose, and just all of the craziness. I mean, this is a transitionary period, if there ever was one, and I just kind of want to comment on it, because what I'm seeing happening right now, guys, is that there's a lot of bread and circuses. There's a lot of things that it may not be intentional, but it sure is absorbing people's attention. And right now, your time and your attention are your most valuable things. When I say things like, you got to appreciate the water coming through the taps, the lights being on and the heat coming through the vents, I mean it, because there may come a time when those things just are not a luxury that you have at your disposal, or it's going to cost so much that it's going to make life incredibly difficult. So I try to not allow myself to be distracted by these algorithmic forces that are at work in feeding me up this information, which appears to just be intended to rile people up, and it's bread and circuses. During the collapse of the Roman Empire, they made sure that they provided people entertainment so that they couldn't see what was happening around them. It's very important that this day and age that you are maximizing and trying to squeeze everything you can out of this grid that's up while the getting is good, because it could come violently crashing down at any moment now. So I'm just saying, if it's Elon Musk and the Twitter fiasco and the Hunter Biden thing and all these other things coming to light, the crazy political divide that has ensued, the politicization and the woke pendulum that's swinging back in the other direction, all of these things, okay? At the end of the day, I'm a firm believer as a prepper that if we take 100% accountability and responsibility for our lives, then politics is virtually meaningless. Because as long as you're doing, everything you can, that's going to determine 90% of your fate, not whoever is in office. And I'm not saying, that politics doesn't matter or anything like that. It definitely matters, but just be careful, because I think that there is, I don't want to say it's intentional, but it appears as though this craziness is being put there for us to distract us from the fact that the superpowers of the world are gearing up for a major conflict, that economic hardship is going to reach critical levels very soon for a lot of people on this world, on this earth, in this world, however you want to call it. And at the same time, they're also trying to strip people of a lot of their freedoms, whether it's their freedom of speech, their freedom to bear firearms, to hunt, even. The bureaucracy is going to grow as we enter these austere times. Case in point, firearms are one of those things. If you didn't see our review that we did earlier today of the folding shotgun, probably one of the most practical folding survival rifles that I've ever used, go and check it out. It seems that anytime we do a firearms review on this channel, it doesn't get a lot of attention, and I'm not chalking that up to YouTube suppression or anything like that. I actually am a believer, believe it or not, in the YouTube algorithm having a certain wisdom to it. I do believe that, and I'm not just saying that so that I don't get canceled or anything like that. I actually do believe that there's a method to YouTube's madness that I don't entirely understand. But I will say that any video that we've done that showcase firearms, even if it's that like flamethrower up there or crossbow videos that we've done, shotgun videos that we've done, they don't seem to get a lot of traction, or not nearly as much as I think they would. Now that may be because I'm misreading my audience. I'm willing to take accountability for that, but I'm not sure. Maybe there's some other force at work. Anyways, what I will say is that our provincial government is fighting back against this current legislation that is happening, Bill C-21, which has been amended to include a variety of other firearms. Bill C-21, if you don't know, if you're not from Canada, basically what it is, and if you're not from Canada, then you've probably already been through this phase of the process of restricting firearms in your country, or you're about to. And what it is the restriction of handguns. But they've amended this bill after it was already passed to include a variety of other firearms. And when I say a variety, I'm talking about thousands. I'm talking about firearms, pretty much all black guns, as they call them, assault rifles, as they like to call them, that ambiguous terminology, very subjective. We're talking about everything from SKS to THYROSAFE to Chris Vectors, you name it, they're gonna ban it. And they snuck this in at the last minute intentionally. Okay, now the reason why are unknown, but here's what they've done. And this has been my criticism of how the Conservatives are dealing with this issue. They're now framing this as an anti-hunting gun bill. Okay, and I have a problem with how they're framing it like that, because this is not an anti-hunters gun legislation, anti-gun legislation. This is an anti-shooters legislation. And there's a very, very critical distinction to be made there. Because here's what they're going to do, I think. I think that the Liberal government has made the most outrageous amendment that they could possibly think of, so that perhaps in the last minute, they're going to revamp this list and remove a variety of the hunting rifles. And then the Conservatives are probably going to chalk that up as a win, even though the Conservative leader has pledged to repeal Bill C-21 if the Conservatives are ever so lucky to take office, which, based on the coalition of the Bloc, the NDP and the Liberals and the Greens, it's very likely that that'll maybe never happen again. What I will say is that it appears as though they just did this. They made the most outrageous recommendations that they could, so that at the last minute they could look like the good guys by taking away a few of the hunting, or giving back some of the hunting rifles, but still taking away everything else. And the Conservatives are going to say that that's a win. That's an old sales tactic called the door in the face sales tactic. It's the idea that, a salesman comes to your door and he makes this outrageous proposition and you slam the door in his face. Then he knocks again. He says, okay, how about this, right? And it's still outrageous, but relative to the proposition he just made, it doesn't seem that bad, right? So Bill C-21 is still going to go through. They're still going to take all the semi-autos, but they're probably going to give back some of the ridiculously out of place firearms that they put on this list that were, like single shot 22 rifles and just, things that shouldn't be on this list if it really is just for the purpose of restricting semi-autos, which many, including the gun lobby as a whole, don't agree should be banned at all, including handguns, which a lot of the gun lobby don't agree should be banned, because firearms owners in this country are among the most law-abiding, You can't have a criminal record and own a gun. I mean, there's steps that you can go through, I think, to get a firearms license. If you have a criminal record, there's some exceptions, but we're the most thoroughly vetted. We pay probably the most amount of taxes, and there are millions of people in this country who own firearms, believe it or not, and none of them are actively involved in gang violence as far as I know. Anyways, I'm sure there's always the oddball exception, but what I'm trying to say is that I really don't like how they're framing this, because that is what I foresee happening. I've made this criticism of Rachel, what's her name? Rachel Dakow or something. She's one of the conservative MPs, and I can't pronounce her name. I remember if it's Raquel or Rachel or... Anyways, terrible with names, guys. But she's really framing this now as an anti-hunter legislation. She's trying to make a name for herself, right? I appreciate what she's doing. I really do. I think anybody who's going against this in any way they can is a good thing. And maybe there's some strategy there where they think that if they go at it from the perspective of protecting shooters' rights as opposed to hunters' rights, they won't be able to make any headway in the public eye. There could be something to that, but I still think that we need to keep the bar set where it's at. Otherwise, we set a very bad precedent that sport shooting in general is completely unjustified, and that appears to be where they want the goalpost moved to. Anyways, let's talk about how our province is fighting back in a very creative way. Now, Saskatchewan will not comply with the new banning of firearms that are being imposed by the federal government. Now, in May 2020, there were already 1,500 firearms that were reclassified as prohibited and banned by the Liberals. And this is what that pertains to. So, but it's also going to pertain to when they come to confiscate all the thousands of guns, millions of guns that are going to be included in this sweeping amendment to Bill C-21. So they've introduced a new legislation to protect gun owners. And what they've done is very creative here, because they can't really resist the federal government's laws, but they can make it very complicated and very prohibitively costly for the federal government to embark upon this gun confiscation. So what they've done is they've expanded the role of the Saskatchewan Firearms Office, that's the province I'm from, in prosecuting non-violent regulatory firearms offenses. And this, like I said, is going to be pertinent to the banning of the 1,500 firearms from May 2020 and probably the ones from Bill C-21. So they're not going to be devoting provincial policing resources to this federal confiscation program or buyback program or whatever it is. And it would also restrict provincial and municipal agencies from accepting federal government money to confiscate firearms. So that's very interesting. So they're not going to accept money from the feds to go and confiscate firearms, and they're not going to, put any of their own money into it for that purpose. They're going to possibly defund the RCMP if they proceed with this confiscation. Any agent of the federal government that is going to confiscate a firearm needs to be licensed by the Chief Firearms Officer of Saskatchewan. That's another interesting roadblock, bottleneck, if you will. There's also going to be a new legislation that will ensure fair compensation for firearms seized. So they're basically going to force the buyback of these firearms, which is going to cost the government billions of dollars, which most Canadian taxpayers are not going to be happy about. It's also going to require the new legislation to require forensics and ballistics testing on all firearms seized before they are destroyed. So that's going to be incredibly time consuming and costly. And Alberta has also echoed this and said that they're not going to agree to having the RCMP act as confiscation agents, although they don't provide as detailed a plan. Anyways, guys, I'm going to run out of battery life here. I just wanted to muse about a few things today, a little stream of consciousness style video. Let me know what you think. Am I off the mark with my observations here that we're being distracted and they want us to fight with one another? And maybe there's good reason to fight with one another. Maybe this is just the woke pendulum swinging in the opposite direction. But it appears that very convenient that as we enter the dark times ahead, that all of a sudden, you know, things are going to get political again and there's going to be civil unrest. And I do think that in 2024, if we can get there without a mushroom cloud in the distance, that, you know, we could potentially see events that made the truckers' protest and January 6th look like just a appetizer. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.